Hey guys, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this episode. I just did want to apologize to you for the audio quality on Adam's side. It was a little weak. We did try to tune it and get it to work at the best we could, but however, it's still a little bit lower than I'd like, so I do apologize for that. But he does have some great knowledge that he drops on us, and he's a great guy. Second thing I want to do is shout out to Stanley Bricino. I hope I said that right, Stanley. If I did not, you can put another comment. But he commented on episode 186, Finding Your Creative Passion. He called out the Orville set. And what's funny is he said, I win. I've never seen 1 second of one episode, and I knew that. So great job to you, Stanley. Apparently, you should be reviewing TV and movies because you know them without ever watching them. But in all sincerity, thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and let's get into the episode. Here we go.
Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast, featuring James Creviston and Luke LaCoy. Yeah, we're about to get clean up in here, so clean your mouth out with a bar of soap and get ready for the Clean Comedy Podcast.
Hey, everybody, it's James. This is the Clean Comedy Podcast, and today I have my amazing, funny co-host, Mr. Luke McCoy.
Hey.
And today we have one of the funniest people I've ever met. I love this guy. I got to do a show with him before. He was so entertaining, super funny, and you'd probably seen him on Dry Bar Comedy. He's goes all around the country as a comedian. He's super funny. I'm actually not sure where he lives, so I think he lives in California too. Hopefully he does. I know he has. He's working. He's still working, as far as I know. And so, please welcome the very funny, the very entertaining, the very hilarious Mr. Adam Cozens.
Ooh.
Oh, that's not working. Hold on.
Oh,
Are you there?
yeah, I had to unmute. The host asked me to unmute myself.
Oh, really? Okay, good. All right. I was like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. All right.
Hello, how are you, man?
Good. How's it going? Good to see you.
Good. You're right. I am in California. I live
Okay.
in Pasadena. So
Pasadena.
Oh,
just outside, like we call ourselves Los Angeles, but nobody else counts us as Los Angeles. But we're Los Angeles, and we want to be. You know, like we're part of LA County, but we have like our own like municipal government in Pasadena. Like if you get a parking ticket in Pasadena, you go to court in Pasadena. You don't go to Van Nuys or Santa Monica. This is content that will work nationwide. We're off to a good start, right?
So Adam, how long have you been doing comedy, stand-up comedy?
I've done stand-up comedy for 13 years now.
Wow. And where'd you start at? Where'd you get your start at?
I started in New York City at the New York Comedy Club. Where I first started doing open mics there, but I first got established and started doing spots at the Comic Strip on the Upper East Side, 83rd and 2nd. I started out as a bouncer when I had read somewhere, I think it was like Mike Birbiglia or Ben Bailey or someone was talking about how back in the 80s, everyone used to get jobs at comedy clubs as their way to get in the door. And so I got a job as a bouncer. I happened to go in there and watch a show. I bought some tickets in Times Square, which is like such a tourist move. But so I knew I wanted to do stand-up, but I was so scared to do stand-up. Like I was in Seattle at the time, which is where I'm from originally, and I knew I wanted to do stand-up, but I had this fear in my mind that the first open mic I would go to, it'd be like everybody I know from high school in the crowd. I was just mortified of that. So much so that in order to do stand-up for the first time, I made myself move all the way across the country to New York just because I'm like, well, no one will see me fail at my dreams here. And so I moved out there and started doing open mics. And when I got this job as a bouncer, they wouldn't have hired me if they knew I wanted to do stand-up. I found out later. They just thought I was some big dude who liked watching comedy shows because I attended a show and then asked if they needed anyone to work there. And yeah, they found out like a couple months later that I was doing open mics around the city, and they're like, we never would have hired you because we have kind of a policy against doing that because it just makes things weird. But yeah, you're already here, so what the heck. So I got very lucky. I got very fortunate there.
That's awesome. The Comic Strip is also where Jerry Seinfeld performed a lot, correct?
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld started out as a host there back when he was like 21, 22. Eddie Murphy was like the first club here, performed out when he was like 18. Um, I'm trying to think who was there, like hanging out when I was starting out, just like as a singer. Like Aziz had just left there. He was doing like late night spots there, which is what we all started doing. My class of guys, it was myself and Joe Mackey and Sam Moreau and Jamie Lee and Jermaine Tyler. Like we'd hang out like 5 nights, just waiting to do like 5 minutes at the end of the normal show. Like so, like all the good comics who would pay to see, and then like for whoever was left, we'd get to go on and tell jokes to those guys at the end of the night. It'd usually be like between 5 and 20 people, all of whom had already seen 3 hours of stand-up, most of them who didn't speak English. So it was a really good way to really test out material at 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Have you seen Pete Holmes' Crashing Show? Have you seen that show?
Yeah, I love that show. That's a really funny one.
Yeah, he does that. He has to like go up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's like nobody in there and stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
I look at the time, we all told ourselves, "Oh, this is going to make us really strong. You'll be able to go up in front of anybody. You'll be fearless." But I think it just developed a lot of really bad habits too. It's like, all right, let's see what I can do to make these idiots laugh, and then you like totally sell out your own soul in order to get them to make it. And I was like, I'll take my shirt off. I don't care. It's just like, all right.
So what? When did you move out to LA? How long into comedy did you move out to LA?
About roughly 4.5 or 5 years in. I had been dating a lady in New York who was from Los Angeles, and she had an opportunity to move back home for something. And we did long distance briefly, and then I had the thought of like, well, she doesn't live in like Des Moines, Iowa, or she doesn't live in Boise. She lives in sunny, beautiful Los Angeles. Another good place to do stand-up comedy. So I thought, oh, I really like her, and now we're married and we have a child. So it was a good call on my part.
Congrats. And what's the biggest difference between New York and LA for comedy? Like, what do you see as the biggest difference?
I'd probably say just general amount of stage time is there was so much more in New York than I was starting out. I could get on stage, up to like I wasn't, I was like 4 years in when I left, 4 or 5 years in, so I wasn't like a commanding name who could get up whenever I wanted to. But like there was nights that I was getting like 3, 4, 5 spots a night each time out there, not like on a consistent basis, but every so often. And so now I come out to Los Angeles and it's more quality over quantity out here. Because a lot of those sets you're doing in New York, they technically counted as like, I'm on stage, I'm telling jokes, but like, again, to who, to what reaction. Like out here, I'm doing a lot less sets, but they're for better audiences, I would say. So, not always.
Right.
So yeah, I get on stage a lot less out here, but it means more each time I do, and so I try to bring like new jokes, and I try more out here, if that makes sense.
Do you still do open mics and stuff? I know you've been doing it for 13 years. Do you still do open mics?
Yeah, whenever I can. I'd say that with having like a daughter presents like challenges in that way is I'm not always super interested in going out. Like when I come home from like if I'm working on a project or if I'm out during the day, like I don't immediately want to come out and then immediately leave again. Like I was doing the road pretty hardcore for a couple of years, and it was like that was a pretty big hang up for me. Is I would be gone, like I'd leave on a Thursday, I'd come home on like a Sunday or a Monday, and then I'd often leave again the next Thursday. So it wasn't really fair to like my wife to like go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then leave again on Thursday. So I kind of fell out of doing spots around the city. And so now a lot of the stuff I do is booked, but like I love, if there's like a fun open mic around where I live, I absolutely love doing it. Like there's some fun ones in South Pasadena or in Eagle Rock or cities, again, very LA specific references. But I like doing those a lot.
No, and I like the Ice House. They have a good open mic there, and then that's one of the best clubs. I love that club.
It's so much fun, and the Ice House, that was one of the first places that I started working at when I moved out here, because they really value clean comedy. It's just such an established place, man. Like it's like you walk around. Like there's a lot of clubs who like we're talking about the comic shop earlier, who like they're great but like their lineage goes back to like maybe the late 70s, early 80s. But like you walk around like the Ice House, it's like Bob Newhart and like the Smothers Brothers and Steve Martin and stuff. It's like really like legends, like
Yeah.
60s, and like that's the stuff that I just get fascinated by.
Yeah. I love Bob Newhart. He's one of my favorites. So that's awesome you brought that up.
Yeah, Bob is. I have this CD right over. I can see it from here. He's, you know what he's known for? His classic CDs. No, Bob is. Yeah, I would put him for me. If I was going to make like a Mount Rushmore of my own personal favorite stand-up comics, it would probably be Bob. I would say Brian Regan, Norm Macdonald, and Gary Shandling would probably be my top.
Gary Shandling's a good one. Yeah. My wife just bought the actual albums, like the vinyls, and she framed them because on Crashing, there's an episode where Pete goes into his apartment and he has Let's Get Small framed in a frame there. And so I was like, ooh, I love that. I want to do that. And so I looked it up, and then I have Let's Get Small, Button Down Bob, Mind of Bob Newhart, Eddie Murphy comedian, and Rodney Dangerfield's No Respect framed up and stuff and hung up in my room. So it's like one of my favorite things. And it like inspires me to do better.
I need to invest in things that would make me happy like that, because that would make me really happy too, to have something like that. But those are things that I see other people have, and I'm like, oh, I'd like that. And then it leaves my mind until it gets brought up again. I'm like,
So how did you get started going out on the road? Like, I know that's a difficult one for comedians to do, especially in LA or even New York sometimes. I mean, here in New York, it's easier because you can go out to like Jersey or whatever, or even up to the northern part of New York State and do shows. But in LA, it's kind of hard sometimes to get booked on the road because everybody's kind of vying for the same spot. So how'd you get started with that?
Well, I honestly, I chalk it up to just being naive and to just just being bold, because I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to do some of the things that I did. Like I would just working as a bouncer and like as a young comic, I got to meet everybody. And comics felt much more comfortable talking to me because I was like a bouncer and I wasn't some leechy like young comic who's looking for advice. So they would talk to me, and then they'd get to know me and like me. And then they'd find out later that I wanted to do stand-up, but we were already friends at that point, so it was too late for them. And so, this a really funny comic out of New York, Andy Pitts, he was the first comic to take me on the road with him, and just like he just knew I was really interested in growing and doing longer sets, and like he'd take me to just like up to Connecticut, like to just do like coffee shops he's headlining, or to Staten Island for like synagogue gigs or whatever it was. And it was so much fun. And then I started working with this guy, Joe Bolster, and he would take me around to different clubs in the Northeast, like Pennsylvania, Auburn, New York, and that kind of upstate. And then I just started getting a little more confident, and I started like kind of reaching out. Like, here was a strategy that I would offer to comics out there is, if there's somebody, there was this comic, I'm not going to name him, but he was not, I'm just being honest, he was not a very good comedian. But he had been around for a long time and he worked a lot. And so I would notice on like Facebook or wherever the clubs he was plugging, like, hey, I'll be here next weekend. And I thought, well, shoot, if he could get in there, I bet I could get in there. And so then, like, wherever he was working, I would like email the booker, like, and be like, hey, I would love to come work there. And like, because I just knew their bar was pretty low for who they let in. And I got a couple of dates out of that. And then I just started, just getting more confident myself, got a good tape, started sending it out to some bookers, and started doing some more road work. And so, yeah, like my first times flying out for stand-up were down to like, I think it was the Comedy Caravan down in Louisville, and like the Funny Bone in Oklahoma City. And then, but then when I really started doing road work was when like friends of mine would like have me go open for them. Like I worked with like Joe Mackey for like 2 years after he got like, I think he was third place on Last Comic Standing, third or fourth place. And he just started headlining. He's like, I want a buddy who I trust to do clean, good jokes in front of me to set me up for success. And so I traveled with him for like 2 years. And And then, just different colleges here and there, different comics who I've befriended. But honestly, all of it goes back to the comic strip. Like all the friendships I've made with different people who were asking me to do like one-nighters and stuff. If I really am honest, I can all trace it back to people letting their guard down to me because they thought I was just like a friendly staff member at the comic strip, and I weaseled my way into their lives.
Nice. And then how did you go about getting the dry bar special? Because dry bar is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of good comedians that are doing dry bar specials. How'd you manage to get one of those?
Dry bar, well, my connection to dry bar, I first heard about it before they started even doing tapings because a friend of mine, Nick Cobb,
Hmm.
he's like, he was a neighbor, he moved recently, but he used to live really close to me out here. I've known him since for probably a decade now. He had done, or he told me, okay, so we were doing this weird bar show somewhere in Hollywood, and he's like, I gotta do this like clean show in Provo, Utah, and it's like and he's clean anyway, well, pretty clean, but but it's like 6 p.m. in Provo. That's like really clean. I'm like, yeah, that sounds pretty clean. And so he's stressing out about it. And then when it was over, I'm like, hey, how'd that go? He's like, it's actually really fun. I'm like, oh, it is. I was like, what's it called? He's like, I don't know, because nothing had come out yet. This is like really, really before it. They're just bulking sets at that point. And so then just kind of fast forward a few years later, and I was opening for Gary Goldman at this club in downtown Salt Lake City called Wise
Wise
Guys.
guys.
Yeah,
Wise guys.
and I performed at Wise Guys I think 2 or 3 times before that, and so I had a pretty good reputation with the owner there, and I had a pretty good weekend. That one of the people who books Dry Bar is connected to the club, and they saw me and liked me, and when I got home, they had offered me a date to come back to Provo and date, and so yeah, really just doing doing stand up was really what it came down to. I wish I had a better story.
No. That's good. That's the thing is if you're just hustling and grinding and doing what you do, and you're good at it, people are gonna find you. That's the truth. What would be your biggest tip for new comedians or comedians early in their career? What would you tell them to do? Like, or if you had to start over, what would be the one thing that you would do to see success?
I think I talked with you about this. Maybe it was off mic one time, or maybe it was somewhere. But I think the thing I would tell anybody who wants to do stand up before they ever do it is to actually just physically go to an open mic.
Yeah.
Because like I had never done that. All I had seen was like sets on the Tonight Show or Comedy Central Presents, like big stage, bright lights, crowd just losing their minds on every joke. So I was like, dude, I'm not ready for that yet. I don't think I'm gonna get them like that. That kept me off stage for probably 2 years before of wanting to do it before I actually did it because I just like, oh, my jokes are there yet. Because you don't realize when you actually do stand up, it's like that's not the setting you're going into. It's a very dimly lit room with like 6 people in it, and most of them are like, I paid $5 to perform, so it was not like glamorous by any means. And so, but I didn't know that until the first time I walked into a door of an open mic, and I'm all like, oh, shoot, when I saw the guy in front of me, like he was bombing, and I'm like, oh, I can bomb, oh. And so yeah, my biggest tip would be to go and actually watch it because it really demystifies it. Because if you only see the Netflix specials or the Dry Bar specials or anything, you're going to think and it is an art ultimately, but like just the baby steps of it, you can finagle your way on stage a lot easier if you just take that leap early on. And then if you're a little bit more established, I would say just like it's so cliche that it's almost not even worth saying, but just like just keep writing but don't. There's been this mentality. It started. I mean, I'm sure it's been around forever, but back when I was in New York, just like that real like grinding mentality, like getting and I talked about it earlier, like getting up so many times a night, not having a social life. I just do this, and I think that's ultimately going to be very detrimental to a lot of like the comedy community because you need to have life experiences to like write about and to joke about. Um, And obviously, like in the first couple of years, it's really good to get on stage as much as you can just to develop your like sea legs for it. But then after a certain point, I think it's just as valuable to take time away from the stage and to go camping or just go travel somewhere not with the purpose of doing stand up, just go to a wedding, go to a whatever, just so you can like be around non-comedians, see what else is going on in the world. Because I was getting into that headspace of like I only had comedian friends, we only talked about comedy, and I had very little to offer anybody else. So it was that's what was really nice about moving out here. And then my wife and her family and all her lifelong friends were out here, and so I developed this circle of like non-comedy friends. And I think that was one of the most beneficial things to happen to me is like so many. I pretty much all my jokes nowadays are from just experiences being around normal people. Like very very few interesting thing happens with comics, or things that are repeatable. It's just a lot of sets and traveling to sets and hanging out at bars and it's like a rinse, wash, repeat. So live a life. It would be my biggest piece of advice. Don't get so hung up on the amount of stage time you're getting after a certain point, and enjoy, fall in love, fall out of love, get hit by a car. I don't know.
So are you doing, with all this COVID stuff, are you out able and doing shows anywhere, or are you just kind of stuck like the rest of us right now?
I've done one show. I had a buddy who used to run this bar show out in Santa Monica, and he said the owner was like, they want to try one. This is probably about a month ago. And he's like, they really want to try one out. They're going to do social distance seating. You can stand outside, or there'll be a designated spot in the corner with all the other comics. I'm like, I don't trust you, the other comics. So I stood outside. But it was actually pretty fun, and it was nice because I hadn't been on stage for like 3 months at that point, and so it was fun to go in. I stayed outside the entire time. The host came out to get me. I wore my mask into the bar. They announced my name. I pulled it down. I kept it around my neck like a weirdo. I like wore gloves to touch the mic. It was like I actually had a pretty good set, but I'm shocked because I was so in my head the entire time about everything I was doing. And it was one of those ones where you don't really want the audience to laugh because you're afraid of their like all their spit and breath coming up to you. But it was really fun, and I loved it, and it made me miss it. I have been. That's the only one I've done though. I've been doing a decent amount of Zoom shows, not a ton, but just here and there, probably once every couple of weeks, and that's been good for kind of getting out these thoughts that you have that ultimately probably when stand-up actually gets back to normal, no one will want to hear anymore because they're going to be so sick of all of this. The humorous thoughts we're having, that's just the life everyone's going to have lived for 3 to 6 to 9, 10 months. They're not going to, I don't know, I don't think people are going to want to hear a ton of COVID jokes. Like maybe
we talked about that too.
So if you have jokes, get them out now, whether it's on Twitter or a Zoom show or a podcast. Because I have a feeling once we're back on stage, they're going to be pretty sick of that.
100%. Luke, did you have a question?
No, I was wondering, like, because we talked about this, like, what is there to write about lately, and it's all about like just being stuck at home, and everyone is going to be talking about that, and so I mean everyone's ready to get out there, and I think get back to the routine material of just generic jokes. I think that's going to be the new once we get out again.
I think that's a funny thought because I was, my whole Twitter feed or Facebook, whatever, it's all full of people doing, COVID, whether it's jokes or it's just thoughts or whatever. And someone just tickled me the other day with just some dumb random trivia thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, just mindless, thoughtless, just a joke for the sake of being a joke. I love that.
That's awesome.
I want more of those.
So, Adam, where can people find you? Where can they find your comedy and find out more about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Adam Cozens27. That's ADAMCOZENS 27. Same on Instagram. And somehow, unbeknownst to me, I've developed a little bit of a TikTok following.
Oh,
I,
nice.
it was not by design. I put up just for fun. I put up a video of my about then 2, now 3-year-old daughter and I. She was just telling me a knock joke, and it got I think it's up to like 260,000 views or something like that.
Wow.
Like that's what I'm known for. That's great. Her just telling me a knock joke. But you can find me on there, whatever. They're all kind of the same.
Is there 26 other Adam Cousins with the same spelling?
Man, what? So, no, hopefully not. There's a few though I found. But I had my friend Fred. He was a big early adopter in all of like social media and stuff, and he told me back in like I guess it would be probably like '06 or '07 that there's this new like short form blogging website called Twitter. And he's like, you should get an account because everyone's gonna want one. And so I signed up for a Twitter account. I'm just using my name, Adam Cozens. And then it did not take off. And so I completely forgot about it. And then like 3 years later, it started to bubble up again. I'm like, oh, I should sign up for a Twitter account. And so I signed up for a new account, forgetting that I already had Adam Cozens. I'm like, oh, somebody took Adam Cozens, man. I missed it. And so then I started using Adam_Cousins for like a decade. And then I think one day I'm like, oh, I should see who this other Adam guy is. And it was me. And I tried to retrieve the password, but it was attached to an old email account that had also expired, and so Twitter's not giving it back to me. So then one day I was just tired of saying underscore, and so I just made it 27, and I have no explanation for that, other than when I was a kid, I heard it was Weird Al's favorite number, and so I adopted it as my favorite number too.
That's funny. 27 was my number when I played football and stuff too. So that's funny. Yeah, so it was like my lucky number. So that's why I was like, oh, is there 26 other ones, or why'd you pick that? So it was good.
No, I have
Awesome.
just something I gleaned onto as a poser at a young age, and I kept it for I guess I'm 36 now, quite a long time.
Nice. Luke, where can people find you at?
Luke LaCoy on the social medias.
All right, you can find me at jamesdcreviston.com or comedypreneur.com, or if you go to YouTube, you can watch this video and see the background. Put in what you think the background is. You can just write in the comments below, call out your name on one of the podcasts, and leave some feedback. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you're listening, because we appreciate it, and it helps the podcast grow. We keep moving up in like different rankings. We're like big in Canada right now. I have no idea what's up with that. So I'm not even. Maybe it's because of Luke. Like they like you because you're Canadian. That's what it is. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for subscribing, and have a great one. Bye.
Hey.
Yeah, we're about to get clean up in here. So clean your mouth out with a bar of soap and get ready for